Hello, how's it going? In today's video, I'm covering the fleet of Kul Tiras, as well as the Forsaken and the Horde, from Chronicle Volume 3. So let's go! Peace between the Horde and the humans of Theramore Isle lasted a few years, but it didn't last forever. Of course it didn't. However, it wasn't really Warchief Thrall or Jaina Proudmoore's fault. At some point, a massive fleet of Alliance ships arrived on the shores of Kalimdor, and leading it was Jaina's dad, Grand Admiral Daelin Proudmoore. They immediately launched attacks on the Orcs and nearby Troll settlements. Daelin had seen some shit in the Second War, and had even lost his son, Derek. That's right, his son's name was Derek. I don't know why, but that really tickles me. Anyway, as a result of those things, Daelin had no intention of allowing these creatures to regain their strength. As far as he was concerned, extermination was the only option. Thrall hoped he could reason with the humans and inform them that his Horde was nice. They were completely different to the old Horde that had decimated the Eastern Kingdoms. He attended a meeting with what he thought were emissaries from Theramore, but then suddenly they were like, ha-ha! Turned out they were assassins, sent by Daelin Proudmoore. And like most assassins, they were there to do some murdering. It's alright though, they failed. But this was enough to start a war. Thrall was understandably furious. Assassins had killed his parents. Plus it's not nice to almost die. So he rallied the Orcs, the Darkspear Trolls, the Tauren, and even some nearby Stonewall Ogres for battle. They needed to strike fast though. Despite Jaina desperately trying to stop her father, the Grand Admiral had taken over Theramore, and now had control of the sea and a defensible city. The longer they left it, the more chance he had of fortifying his position and then launching strikes all over the continent. So, the Horde travelled to Theramore and quietly reached out to Jaina, and Thrall asked her to do something a bit weird. Let the Horde into Theramore so we can kill your father, please. And I'm sure at first she was like, you what mate? Thing is, Jaina knew deep down that Thrall's Horde was different than its predecessor. She'd seen proof of that with her own eyes. She'd seen their honour in the battle against the Burning Legion. There was a cycle of hatred between the Horde and the Alliance, and it needed to end. And she tried to convince her dad of all of this already, and he wasn't having any of it. He couldn't be reasoned with, not after what happened to Derek. Fucking Derek. So reluctantly and with a heavy heart, she stood aside. She only asked that the Horde spare as many of her people as they could, and they were like, sure, whatevs. The assault on Theramore began, and they started to cut their way through the city. Rexxar was the one who ultimately landed the fatal blow on Daelin Proudmoore. He'd seen how prejudice and hatred could darken the hearts of good soldiers. It had happened to a buttload of members of the old Horde. So he turned to Jaina and was like, hey, turn that frown upside down. Remember your father for the proud warrior he was, not the complete knobgoblin he ended up being. The Horde left the city in Jaina's hands and buggered off back to their homes. Rexxar went off and lived as a hermit again. He'd grown used to hunting and living alone, but he made it clear he'd fight to defend the Horde whenever it needed him. The survivors of Daelin's fleet sailed back to the Eastern Kingdoms. When news reached Kul Tiras of their ruler's demise, the people were a little bit upset. They cried out for vengeance, but the rest of the Alliance nations didn't really give a crap. There was still a plague of undeath in Lordaeron to worry about, plus Daelin had sailed off on his own authority. This annoyed the Kul Tirans even further, and they isolated themselves from the Alliance. However, they weren't necessarily angry at King Varian Wrynn or any other specific Alliance leaders. They were, however, furious at Jaina Proudmoore. Bloody traitor. She wasn't welcome back anytime soon. That was probably the most relevant stuff I've covered so far. Am I cool now? Meanwhile, Sylvanas and her Forsaken found they were surrounded by enemies on all sides. The Scarlet Crusade didn't take kindly to them, undead with free will. Not on their watch. They vowed to eradicate them, no matter what. Sylvanas tried to reach out to her former people at Kel'Thalas. After all, she died protecting them. It would be nice if they did something in return. And the Blood Elves' response was, piss off. Desperation grew, so she sent ambassadors to both the Alliance and the Horde. The emissaries that went to the Alliance never came back. Sylvanas suspected their fate probably went a bit like this. Hi there, nice to meet you. I'm here on behalf of However, the first sign of hope came from an unexpected place. The Tauren. Archdruid Hamel Runetoten looked past their gross faces and believed they could be redeemed. Possibly even revived. Not physically, don't get too excited, but spiritually. He brought the Forsaken ambassadors to meet Cairn Bloodhoof, and the High Chieftain agreed. Let's give him a chance. Thrall invited Sylvanas to Orgrimmar. He had sympathy for her people, but he also recognised the strategic value. They lived in the ruins of Lordaeron. That's a pretty valuable foothold in the Eastern Kingdoms. Plus the Scourge hadn't been completely destroyed. Sooner or later, the Lich King's undead army would become their problem, and their lands would need protecting. This was all reason enough for Thrall to be like, sod it, welcome to the Horde, Forsaken. And we're leaving it there! In the next Volume 3 video, gnome stuff, King Varian Wrynn gets kidnapped, and then there's a little weird section that symbolises the start of World of Warcraft. As always, thanks very much to those of you who support the channel as patrons. If anyone would like to support the channel in that way, links in the description. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, all of that bollocks. And all that's left to say is, thanks for watching, and see ya!